welcome back to Barebones Survival, and as we get started tonight we are going to talk about a couple of things that might surprise you a little bit. Now we're going to start off by pointing out that, let me just grab it for you. As you well know, your basic survival kit includes your blade, flame, and cord, which goes on the body at all times. Your second level kit will be your toolkit, which you keep on you whenever you go out to go around. Dependent on what you're doing, what that kit is will vary, and it will include with it the personal and geographic basics, which includes your pressure bandage for your personal basic, the medical side of, which will include as well, in my specific case, my extra medication as somebody who takes chronic medication. And along with that, when I go out, I always carry a means of carrying water, a water bottle of some variety, because I live in the sort of country that's very hot. But your secondary level involves all of those things which matter very, very greatly, dependent on where you are and what you're doing, your general toolkit. And by and large, I keep mine in a very small pouch or pack, simply to limit what I'm carrying. Your third level up, as you can imagine, is going to be your sustainment kit. And we're going to talk briefly about what the difference is between those tonight. But we're also going to talk about what shouldn't be in those, which is also very, very important. So, if you've just joined us on Barebones Survival, welcome. Thank you for joining. Remember, we have just one rule on the channel, and that's please, please, please don't be rude. You can agree, you can disagree, you can say all the things you like, but we don't permit rudeness. Now, that said, remember to like, share, subscribe, do all the good things that keeps the channel going in that regard. And let's start ourselves off with the basic three levels. So your survival kit, the absolute basics of survival, are going to be those items that you keep on body all the time. They should never leave you, really, simply because they are your last-ditch line of defense against anything that's happened, anything that goes on. Your second level is your basic toolkit, which will vary dependent on where you are. It will dependent on your skills. It will vary dependent on where you are going to a certain degree. So if I'm just walking around town, I'll carry far less stuff than if I'm actually going on a proper hike or if I'm going on an actual camp. But the general themes will kind of stay within my range of skills, and that is a very important point. Your third level is your sustainment, and by and large, these are the tools, the gear, the things that you want to have with you, but which are not time sensitive in any way. It's the kind of gear that you probably will leave in camp. You're not going to necessarily be carrying it around with you all the time if you're out in the bush. It's the kind of gear that you might leave in the office or in your car, but you would want access to if need be. Now, what does that mean in terms of a civilian and in terms of emergencies? Well, for the most part, for a civilian, in terms of emergencies, what you probably aren't going to do is make shelter or make food. Not until you've gotten out of whatever you're into, and gotten to a point of safety where you can actually take the time. Most immediate survival is very time sensitive. So the kind of things that you would want immediately afterwards are going to be different to what you want during. Now, how does that work? Well, take, for example, in Florida, they had floods recently, I believe, and there were a number of displaced people. The primary situation was the need to get out, to get away from where they were, simply because there was immediate danger that needed to be gotten out of. Once they had effected that and gotten out, and it had become not survival but an emergency, something to be dealt with in that regard, then you start thinking of, well, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to manage it? And it's movement to either a camp of some kind or a shelter of some kind, for civilians going to some kind of government shelter or housing that's made available for the meanwhile. Once there, then you're going to start dealing with those things that are sustainment rather than immediate action. So you absolutely do want to have your basic survival kit on you at all times for all the obvious reasons. It would be good to have a greater tool set, which normally you're not going to carry around, simply because it would be impractical or too bulky or not suitable for your work, etc., but which would probably assist you greatly in effecting the move from the danger zone to the safe zone. And this can depend on the environment that you're in, of course. Once you've achieved that, it's at that point that you start thinking about sustainment, your shelter, which isn't just a tent. Don't think of it just as that. It's the clothing you've got, which includes not only what you're wearing, but possibly a change of, especially if it was a flood situation, you want to get dry. It includes some kind of a sleep system, which, yes, might include a shelter, but might not include a shelter. It might include things like blankets and a sleep pad. Maybe you've gotten to a church hall somewhere else, for example, you need something to sleep on. It will include your medical. Now, we're not anymore just talking about the emergency, stop the bleed and get out. Now we're talking about actually dealing with things, whether serious or not, and having a reasonable kit to manage that. We're talking about, yes, the ability to manage where you are, which might include, for example, and this is a fact that a lot of people don't think about, emergency shelters, you probably won't be alone, which means that it will be noisy, it will be a problem. You're going to want things like maybe an eye mask, because lights don't go off when you want them off. It might include such things as earplugs in order to allow yourself a chance to rest. Rest is massively important in an emergency situation, and when you're recovering from the initial shock thereof. So those kinds of things are considered to be not time sensitive as much as a survival kit is, but nevertheless necessary. But they are things that once you've gotten out, you can put them down, but not necessarily have them on you while you're moving about and sorting things out. But your base tool set you might want. So I have my survival kit, which goes in the pockets. I have my walking around kit, which, as many of you do know, I've got one right here. Oops. So this is a small pack, and it's got just the emergency tools. There's no food, there's no real shelter. It's the absolute basics to manage the kind of environment that I'm in all the time. And once I have managed to deal with that environment, my greater kit will go along with that, which will include things like your sleep system, your medical, and yes, your food. Now, in an emergency, by and large, until you've gotten to a completely safe and separate place, you are not cooking food, you are not fishing, you are not hunting. The chance for a civilian that you're going to wind up on a deserted island somewhere and need to do all of that is pretty remote, unless you've chosen to go out, in which case I would assume that you've taken gear to deal with that kind of situation, knowing that you have willingly gone into a place where that is a possibility. So by and large, you will never see in my kits an axe, a machete, a big saw, or anything like that, simply because in general, I'm never in an environment that will need it. If I am going bushcrafting and camping out for some time, that's different, because that's the kind of environment where tools like that would be very much needed. It's a different environment entirely. So you build your toolkit based on the environment you are in, and it will change constantly. Okay, your sustainment kit can also be where tools like that might be, because they're heavier, but you're not going to be lugging them around all the time and things like that, simply because it's not part of the initial phases. Now, in terms of food, what does that mean? It means that you're not going to be carrying around fresh vegetables and things like that, and getting food from the environment, because that's neither practical nor will you have the time for it. Initially, you're going to want the kind of foods that are absolutely zero preparation. It's the kind of thing that you can shove in your pockets and eat as you go, even, which is a very different viewpoint to what a lot of the survival kits that they do show you, because those are for military. And as military, you are in that kind of environment. You know you are going to be in that kind of environment. As a civilian, the most you're going to ever want to do in any stage of the emergency part is literally do no more than boil water. To be able to make a hot cup of tea or coffee or soup, that's it. Or reconstitute a freeze-dried type meal. Now, your initial food sources while you're getting out, dependent on how long it takes, because it's time sensitive, you're going to want to keep it absolute zero prep. If I would have anything, it would be things that like a drink mix, which goes straight in, preferably something that is energy high, and rehydration salts, things like that, to keep you going as you keep moving out to that safe point. It's going to be dried fruit, dried meat, dried nuts, granola bars, oat cookies, that kind of idea, which you can literally, if something happened halfway through, you could stop eating it, shove it in your pocket, and take action to manage whatever. The reason behind that is you don't want to stop until you've gotten to safety. And this is very, very important. Now, you might find once you've got there, a good hot meal would be a good idea, which means that in your sustainment kit, things like freeze-dried rations or MREs or whatever, that's where they feature and where they would become good, simply because there you're dealing with something where you're going to be there for a fair amount of time. You are no longer in any danger. You can stop and tend to any injuries or get a professional, preferably, because the whole point of a doctor is that they actually do spend time learning to deal with these kinds of things, and they do it better than you do. That's the point. Now, in terms of all these levels of gears, I want to briefly talk about gear which is really, really good, but nevertheless, you might not want, which sounds a bit counterproductive in a great many ways, but bear with me. I reiterate again with you that we are talking civilian survival, and we are talking the kind of thing that by and large you might well find is people who are not well trained in all of these things. Okay, now I would immediately tell you that getting training, if you can, if you are able, if you have the time, if you have the money, is always a major bonus. It's always good for you, absolutely, naturally, I mean, without a doubt. But assuming you don't have the ability, there's quite a lot of gear which, in the right hands, is amazingly good, but in the wrong hands is awful. Now, one of the things that has come up from people asking me in the past, well, why don't I ever carry a tourniquet? Well, here's the reason. A tourniquet requires training to use. It should only be made use of for a limited time, and then you need to hand it over to a trained medical personnel who will deal with that medical situation. What that means in short is, if you don't have the training, it actually can make matters far worse. What do I mean? Well, you can stop a bleed with the effective use of a pressure bandage, which works very well, and it can be used with far less skill or training than a tourniquet, which is a timed event. You put it on, you have to release it at certain points, because if you don't, the limb that it goes on can turn necrotic, which is obviously a far worse thing because you could lose the limb. Number two, it is only usable on a limb. Any other kind of injury, it's a problem. So a pressure bandage can be used on any part of the body and on a limb. Far better to take something that takes less skill but is as effective and usable by most people with basic common sense, which is obviously a very effective way to look at these kind of things. We also must consider the option of, as they say, and as you know, we're not allowed to talk about them, but the pea shooter. Should you have one? No, not without proper training. They are very effective and useful in the right hands with the right training, but having one when you are not fully trained, and for that matter, I would go as far as to say trained with the medical treatment of injury from same, simply because if you're carrying one, you run a higher risk of having one used on you. What that basically means is don't carry things that you are not ready to use or can't use. Now, there are all sorts of gear out there that do take a bit of practice. Even the much favored ferro rod does take a bit of practice, and knowing how to just light a basic fire is a very important skill, and one which, while everybody says, yeah, but you can bypass the fancy tools. Yes, they have major advantages. They are great. But you can bypass that with a decent couple of Bic lighters and some backup stormproof matches. These are realities. Now, for a great many people, we don't necessarily have the time nor the money to get all the training. So another good example of gear that don't waste your time if you haven't got the training. They all tell you that you've got to have one of these fancy lensatic compasses. Well, I know somebody that carried a proper military grade lensatic compass for years. They had one that was really expensive and incredibly good. It was great. And they never used it more than to find north because they didn't know how to use it. If you don't know how to navigate with a compass, it's a waste of time and money and weight, because a proper lensatic military grade compass is heavy. You can get by with a simple, decent quality button compass. Now, I know everyone hates button compasses, but it's mainly because many of them that are out there are cheaply made and not good. You can get the good versions, which are not too expensive, and they point to north. And that's what you need. If you're going to spend just a little time learning navigation, as a civilian who doesn't need to find exact location down to the meter, but rather a macro location, you're better off learning how to use and read a map correctly and use a button compass to orient the map, because that's really simple. If you can read a map properly and you can geolocate and things like that, you're in a far better position than lugging around a giant lensatic compass that you can't use. There's no point. Now, I have used a lensatic. I was trained in the use of one in the military. I can map read as well. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that while in the military, I used a lensatic all the time because we were locating specific points. I have never used those functions since as a civilian. I have, however, used a map very often and effectively, and they work very, very well. A certain amount of the tools out there are only useful if you're trained. Know this. If you pick something up and go, I don't really know what I'm doing with it, put it down again. Take an option that you can use, because if you don't, it becomes pointless. Now, along with all of that, let's consider what kind of things that matter. Now, as you know, you have the blade, the flame, and the cord. These three things pretty much line up with the base idea of what kind of things you're going to need. Your cordage kind of indicates all of the shelter type elements. Your flame indicates all of your sustainment and warmth type elements, and of course the blade indicates all the tool type elements. So one of the things that was brought up to me, well, if that's the case, why do I carry a plain folder as my basic survival knife and not a Leatherman, for example? Well, the answer is very simple. Many of the tools on a Leatherman are not tools I necessarily will use or need with my skill set. It's not my primary go-to. That said, however, I will say that they are very useful. I have in fact got not a Leatherman, I have a Swiss gear, which is about 30 years old, and that does ride in my tool pack, because sometimes you do need pliers and what have you and all the rest of it. It's not my primary go-to, but it's certainly very useful. It does have on it both a straight edge and a serrated edge and a saw and a fish scaler and the pliers and a bottle opener and a tin opener and a couple of screwdrivers, and that's more than I will ever need. It fulfills those things that fit to my skill set, my knowledge, and what I find I need, as opposed to something bigger with all the added bits and fancy. If you're a mechanically minded person and that is your skill set, then sure, take and use those things simply because they will assist you. I have other tools which work better for me. I will always carry in my bag a couple of folding plastic water bottles. Why? They're cheap, they're light, they take up no room until I've filled them. They are very, very useful. They work for me, and they're out of the way until I want them, and I have enough to carry a full liter of water with me if I need to in an emergency. My survival gear doesn't include a flashlight. A lot of people put me down on that. Well, first of all, I do carry one in my tool bag because I do. And yes, I have one on my general EDC. Not because it's part of survival. I can manage survival without a flashlight. It is, however, useful on the daily, and it would be useful in survival. So I do have one. Now I'm going to show you just a couple of things very quickly. As I have said, this is my bag, and on my bag, surprisingly enough, I have a number of little things, besides some odds and sods and decorations. One of the things that clips to the outside of my bag, which means it's there when I need it. Weirdly enough, yes, I have a bottle opener. Why do I have a bottle opener? Because every now and then my partner does want to open a bottle. I generally never do, but I keep it on there for her because it's useful. But what I do have on it that I use for me is one of these buckles. Now you say, why do I want a loose buckle? Well, it comes off a paracord bracelet. I put the paracord somewhere else, but it has a ferrocerium rod, a striker, a button compass which I have checked works, and a whistle, which means all of those things are sitting in a small place on the outside of my bag on hand when I need them, when I want them, and they're not in the way. But when the time comes that I require these things, I have these things, which means it works for me. I also have on the same bag, nope, not on this bag because I took it and put it on the other bag. I have a water bottle carrier. It's one of those really cheap Chinese plastic water bottle carriers that you can, it's like a little length of canvas with a clip. You can clip it to your belt and then you can put a buddy bottle on. Why? Because it's massively useful. I often will go around town and I will pick up a bottle of cool drink to drink, no problem, clip it on my belt, and then I'm hands-free. It works. It also means that if I'm ever in a situation, I can pick up pretty much any plastic bottle and use it as a water container. This covers all and more that I need. Along with it, tools which I find very important. You may have noticed I am wearing glasses. So yes, I carry a small cleaning cloth. Why? Because wiping your glasses means you see better. This isn't rocket science. Most of survival is not rocket science. It's logic and care. I do carry a mirror simply because it's useful, both for looking at my own face if I need to find an injury, and also as a signaling device. I like the plastic ones because the plastic ones don't break. I also carry with me because I found it very useful not only in outdoor situations but for general EDC, my card knife. I know they're very weak, they're not great, but it's very sharp, and as a means to just cut that one thing when you need cutting. It's a backup. It's not the only knife I carry, and it's not the primary knife I carry, but it is a backup that will work when I need it. Along with it, I carry the Swiss card, which also has a magnifying lens. It has the tweezers and pen, which is very effective. It has a small pin, which I can use for all sorts of things. It does have a ruler. I've never used a ruler in my life. It does have a small knife, which is useful. It does have the famous Victorinox scissors, and while they are small, they are mighty. It also has a small tool. I don't know what you would call it, but it's got varying screwdrivers on it that fits in the side. And most importantly, it has an incredibly tiny light, which, no, you can't see much with it, but you can find a keyhole in the dark, which means I have a means. Now, because it's so small, I can fit them into my little case that keeps them safe, and I just slide it into my front pocket of the bag, and it's there when I need it. It takes very little space, very little weight, and it's effective. My second line of tool gear are the I need it fairly quickly tools, and that comes into the front pocket there. Yes, the pressure bandage I spoke of. This is a number 3. It's not the biggest, it's big enough. Also in there is my little flashlight, which also has a working button compass on it, and it's a whistle. So it has multiple functions. I mentioned that I carry pills because I am on chronic meds, so I have my little pill case, because this is my kit for me. I also have a larger magnifying lens. I want to get a Fresnel lens, but they're very hard to get, so I haven't got it. I also always carry a very large Ziploc bag for any foods that I might want to carry. It works, it's effective, and it's waterproof, and it stops things getting not only in, but also stops whatever's in getting out. Your next level, of course, is I have a pouch on the side for a water bottle, and yes, that's where I fold up my plastic water bottle so that I have my 500ml carry right there as backup. So I have that on me all the time. I never need to worry about. If I need to get water, I can. You will find that I do carry further stuff to manage that water as well. Even if I'm not carrying all the important things like a life straw or a water filter, I will have tablets. Now, along with that, I also carry a couple of masks, because very often I'm in an urban environment, and urban dust from any damage to buildings and things is absolutely a problem right away. So having a means to keep dust out of my breathing, smoke if there's a fire, urban fires are always very toxic. You've got to deal with that. I carry my wire saw, which everybody hates, but I love because it works for me and I know how to use it properly. As a backup, I have my little homemade blade from a saw blade, which has a metal cutting saw on the back and a knife edge, which is nice and sharp. So I have multiple ways to cut on hand. I have the ubiquitous bandana, which I have not only because of its millions of survival uses, but because you may have noticed I'm a little short on hair, and there is nothing worse in the world than a sunburnt head. Now, you might say, but all of this is such basic gear. Yes, it is, and it's important that it is, because really good survival gear is that basic, and all of it is self-evident. Anybody picking up a kit like this would be able to use the majority of things without any training. It's logical, which means it's an effective kit. I have 2 hanks of cordage because cordage is important. You can use it for a million things and it works. We live in the modern age. Sometimes when I'm out, I might need to charge a phone, and I have a bracelet charger. This is a USB-C cable that fits my phone. It's not the best in the world, but it's effective. I can plug my phone in and charge it when I need to, for the obvious reasons. I have another Ziploc bag. This one is deliberately very big. And the reason for it is it's big enough I can take the entire pack and put it in the bag if I have to. That means if I'm ever in a flooding situation, need to cross a river, whatever, I can waterproof my entire kit and make it safe for me to carry without damage. I do have, because it weighs nothing and sometimes it's useful, for urban type things, yes, it's a measuring tape. It works, it weighs nothing, and it was free. I do carry my pouch, which is literally a small backpack, one of these string backpacks. Any extra stuff I find, I can pick it up, put it in, carry it. So I have additional carrying capacity all the time. I do carry my med kit, which also has my water purification tablets in it. It's just a few band-aids, some wipes and what have you for minor things, but it's good to have, it's useful to have, I've used it often. And the water purification tablets mean that any dodgy water that I have to pick up, I can use half a tablet in my 500 ml bottle. Half an hour later, it's ready to drink. I do carry, for urban situations, entry tools, simply because it might be necessary. If you don't know how to use them, however, don't carry them, because it's a waste of time. I do have as well my little string loop which I made, which can also carry an additional bottle on my belt, and as you can see, it takes up no space. It was basically made with a piece of shoelace. It works. It sits there till I need it. Now, because it's a habit of mine and I was a journalist for many years, I carry my notebooks, which I use all the time. I use them for non-survival reasons because this is my going around town kit, my doing what I do kit, things that might be important, but it has many extra uses. I carry a backup lighter because, well, it's the easiest way to light a fire. I do have in this little pouch the most hated survival tool in the world, which works to open bottles and cans very nicely, which means this is my base level sustainment kit. Surprise. I carry hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is massively important. It's useful for every day to keep yourself sanitized. Yes, it is, especially with all the things that have been going on. But in a emergency situation, keeping clean is incredibly hard. And when you eat and stuff, you want clean hands, because the last thing you want to do is to become sick while you are out in an emergency. So the ability to at least clean off your hands, massive deal. I carry a metal match because, again, it's a very good backup and it's more convenient to use that than it is to use a flint and steel. That said, because I do know how to use one, I do have a ferro rod. I'm not against them. I do carry them. I also have backup matches of varying kinds, including ordinary ones and a striker and stormproof matches in a waterproof sealed plastic container, where they sit unused until such times. Because it's my choice to carry a notebook, I carry a pencil, because writing helps. I do carry a pen as well, but on the off chance that the pen does not work, the pencil will do the job always, and I can use pencil shavings to make tinder in an emergency. Speaking of tinder, I also carry 2 of these. They're basically like a really big thick match made on a fire starter, which makes it very, very easy in an emergency. And I carry braai matches, which are extra long, inside a plastic tube because I prefer those if I have to light a fire outside. And those are more for use than anything else. I carry nail clippers. Really exciting survival gear. Why? Because if you've ever had a broken nail or a problem with a toenail and you have to then walk miles, you will be in agony. You will hate it. That solves it. And also, in normal situations, it means that you get to keep your basic appearance, which might also be important for everyday stuff. Along with that, I also carry a small pry bar, which, yes, you might recognize. I stole it from a bicycle repair kit, simply because it's useful for small things, and it was cheap, and it wasn't difficult to get. I have my main ferro rod, which I particularly do like, and I usually will have this in my bushcraft kit. I don't know how it got into this one, but there it is. It's your Exotac style, striker included, waterproof. I carry some pieces of wire. Yes, it's a giant paperclip, 1,000,005 uses. They say MacGyver could restart the world with one, so yes, I carry. Along with that, something which I think people forget is if you are out, you may end up walking on the road. And being seen is massively important. So in order to be seen, this is hyper-reflective tape. Now, it is in and of itself really, really good, but because it's tape, I could, if I'm wearing a dark jacket or shirt or something, and I still want to be seen, I can just stick it to the back, which means cars coming up behind me will see me. It is a signal device, therefore, that will work at night, and it's effective. And I got it off a much larger roll, so it weighs nothing. It's easy to carry. There's no difficulty making sure I have it. I also have, along with, sorry, that was just a piece of extra paperclip that fell out, 2 items, because you get injured in daily things. And if you're South African, well, when you know, you know. Yes, I carry Zambuk, which is a healing salve if you don't know what it is. And I also have a small healing salve that's good for cuts and things because it works. And they sit in the back of my bag, out of sight, out of mind. They're there when I want them. And that is essentially the entirety of my toolkit for general use. If I'm going hiking in the bush, if I'm going camping, absolutely I'm going to be carrying things more tailored to that, simply because don't be silly. Carry what you are working towards. I have obviously got proper camping gear and proper camping packs and all the rest of it, which I would use if I'm going on a dedicated camp. And this pack will strap to it very nicely, which means I can get wherever I'm going, put my stuff down, just take the bare minimum, and I'm well able to get around and sort things out, which means that I've always got backup. Now, there's a lot of gear that I will not carry. So, I will not carry a tourniquet. Why? Because with a tourniquet, you absolutely want to hand off to trained medical personnel, and you want to do it quickly. The medical response where I am is by and large hopeless. You cannot rely on it, which means that you cannot rely on a tourniquet. Pressure bandage works better, which means if I'm going out into the bush, I will not only have my primary small pressure bandage, I will take a couple of bigger ones as well, just in case. I do not carry a firearm for the most part because it makes you a bigger target. And the bigger target you are, the more likely you're to get into trouble. And here's a real honest truth for the civilian. Go sit in front of a mirror, stare yourself straight in the eye there, and ask the person you're looking at, can you kill somebody? Because by and large, the answer is absolutely no, and nor should you. It's not a good thing. It's not a pleasant thing. It's a bad thing to have to do. Soldiers are trained for it. Police are trained for it. And they have backup psychologists and all sorts to help with the aftermath of it. You're not. If you have a deadly style weapon and you carry it, but you can't use it, it will be used on you. That's fact. In other words, make sure if you're going to carry any kind of defense thing, it's something that you can and will use. Pepper spray is great. It works. You get a decent quality one, not the cheap knockoffs, and they will work. A taser will work. None of them are lethal, making them far safer in case of accident, and far better. Your point as a civilian is not to take on an enemy. It's to deal with the situation and get yourself to safety. It's a completely different mindset, a completely different setup. Don't carry what you can't or won't use. I do know for a fact that there are a great many tools that, used incorrectly, cause a lot of injuries. You might not think it, but a simple axe you do have to know how to use. If you use it wrong, you can hurt yourself. I've seen some bad injuries. When I was in the military, I was often the equivalent, if you will, of the paramedic, simply because the medical personnel were well behind us. So first response for most people was me, which was not a good thing for any manner or form. But yes, I have seen some injuries, and more than once it was somebody who managed to put an axe through his own foot because he wasn't using it right and he thought he knew what he was doing, and he was wrong. Almost 95, 96, 97% of injuries that I came across in the military were idiot injuries, ones which happened where people were doing things that they shouldn't have, or were doing things they didn't know how to do. They really weren't injuries, by and large, from actual action. It was all stupid stuff. And some of them were pretty bad. Like the guy that got stung by one of the world's most deadly scorpions because he was bored and he and his friends were making them fight. They were catching them and made them fight. And then one stung him and he had to be casevaced from the west side of South Africa right across to Durban on the east side, because that was the only place around at all that actually had the correct antitoxin to treat it. And he was so close to passing away. It was frightening, because he was messing around. He was bored. So this tells you that, what are your priorities? Well, your base tools, like you've seen I've got, base skills. Learn how to use a map. Carry a map of your area, especially if you're going out into the bush. Carry a map. Have a map before a compass. Have a basic compass that you know is reliable. It doesn't have to be expensive. Have basic first aid training, the kind of thing that basically is enough that I can stop a bleed if it's bad, and I can deal with minor things and at least have an idea if, hey, I'm not actually in as good a state as I ought to be, but I know that. Get me to a suitable, know when to stop, know how to manage things like dehydration, heat stroke, over fatigue, any of these things. Know the dangers of the area you are in. I often see on these American survival things, they talk about poison ivy. We don't get poison ivy here. We've got other things which are just as bad, I'm sure, but I don't know much about poison ivy. I just don't. If I was in America, I would make damn sure to find out, because it's a serious issue. Can I identify it? No. But I can identify a lot of the things that are dangerous in this country, which is a very different situation. Don't get clever. By and large, yes, mushrooms are a wonderful meal. If you can't identify them, it will be your last one. Make sure you know what you are going to try to eat before you try to eat it. Certain things are not worth the effort. Just leave them unless you know. It's that kind of reality. Know what animals to worry about. I have been in many wild situations where there were leopards. They never bothered me. You leave them alone, they leave you alone, by and large. Snakes, if you walk away, they go away. You know what I'm scared of? Bush pigs that are unnecessarily aggressive and can really hurt you. Hippos, which interestingly enough kill more people than any other animal in the world. Mosquitoes, because where I am, we are not that far from the malaria band, which means, yeah, you better know what it is and how to deal with it, because if you don't, that's a real problem. And in case you're wondering, once you've got malaria, you've never not got it. You can get a recurring attack of it, even though you weren't bitten again. So it's not a pleasant thing to have. You don't want it. If I were to go further north, you would hit the tsetse fly band, and that's even worse because sleeping sickness is terrifying. These are things to know. A little knowledge of the right stuff suitable to you and where you are is worth far more than a ton of gear that you can't use anyway. I often see people saying, yes, but I'll carry it in case I meet somebody on the trail and they'll need it. No, your kit is for you, only you. Extra stuff, maybe, but you're not carrying things for other people. You're carrying things for yourself to manage what you're doing, which is a very, very different situation entirely. It means that you are not supposed to be lugging around gear for others. Pay extra attention to your underwear and socks and shoes. These are the most important clothing items in pretty any environment. Pay huge attention to your clothing. This is your primary shelter. Wear what is suitable for where you are, where you're going, what you're doing. And if, for example, you are working in corporate and have to wear, as a woman say, skirt and high heels, make sure that in your emergency bag you have a change of tracksuit pants and proper tackies that you can change into, because trying to deal with civil unrest or anything like that while in a pencil skirt and high heels is going to be a disaster. Now, this can work broadly for guys as well. We have to wear the right suit, we have to wear the right hard shoes because it looks good. Do not try to walk 40 miles in dress shoes because you will regret it. That means have a backup. Know how layering works with clothing so that you can put things on, take things off, simply because it works better. You regulate your temperature according to the amount of exercise you're doing. You can get really quite hot while walking, and then when you stop in camp, you chill fast, and that's bad. You want to be able to manage your temperature, putting things on, taking things off, and you can do it very simply, dependent on the area where you are. Where I am now, it can get pretty cold. I am up in the mountains. I used to be at the coast where it never got cold. I really would never need a jacket there, never. If it rained, I didn't even care. I was very keen when I went out on hikes and things to have some kind of a mat, because one of the biggest problems on the beach are sandflies, and they will bite you in ways you cannot believe. So having some form of protection from and getting away off the sand was a very big deal. It matters. These are the sort of things you need to know about the area where you are. A little knowledge goes a lot further than a bunch of gear. Your basics are what matter. They're not exciting. They're not fancy. Yeah, you look at many of these kits and I straight away, I think, look, it's nice. It really is nice. I'd love to have it. But it's not necessary. It's not that important for most of what I would be doing. Except in the mountains, I cannot think of a survival situation that I would need a rope for that paracord couldn't do better if I was out. This is a truth. Why is it a truth? Because there's nothing really that requires much by way of climbing. On the other hand, in the mountains, it's a much more reasonable reason to carry all of that sort of stuff because it matters. It's the sort of thing I would carry. So think about where you are. Think also in terms of the situation. There's all kinds of clever things that you can do with birch bark. Okay, you don't get birches in my country. What's the point of knowing it? None. On the other hand, there are equivalents, other things which work just as well, and I would choose those, know about those because they're appropriate to me. So when it comes to dealing with any level of survival, your main point is dealing with your skills, your environment, and your most likely situations. If you're in town, you're going to need slightly different gear to if you're in the bush. In the bush, I would prefer to have as my absolute backup shelter a mylar tent. I would. They're far better, in my opinion, than most other things. But in town, in an urban environment, there is virtually nowhere that you can set a tent up. So carry instead the mylar bivy bag, which doesn't need setting up and accomplishes the same thing. It's not quite as good. There are downsides to it compared to the tent, but it will work. And that there is the sort of important side of thinking. Look at what you've got. Consider what you are carrying. And from that's where you start creating the kit that works for you. Always go back to your default. If I had to get out of an area, I would prefer to go in the car because I can carry a lot more and it's a lot easier. And don't be dumb. We're not Rambo. However, I always prepare that I will have to walk. Why? Because if all else fails and it goes that bad, you will be on foot, Shank's pony. That's how it goes. So you prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and manage wherever it falls in between. You might say, well, I'll just take my car out, and then get flooded in such a way that you can't get the car out, or the car's now broken. What are you going to do? Now, you walk. If you walk, have the right shoes. It matters. So thinking is the game of survival. You can survive on far less gear than you can possibly imagine if you think. Layering correctly, not just clothing but gear, know what I need right the moment there's a problem, and make sure that's on hand all the time. The things that you got plenty time, that stuff goes in the outer kit that can be left places. If you've got time to light a fire and cook a meal, you're not in danger right now. It's not that serious, which means all cookery type things go with your blanket, your bigger medical kit, the heavier stuff that you don't need instant access to, because you will have time. Unlike, for example, the kind of gear that, oh look, I've got a serious injury and I will probably bleed out in a few minutes. No, then you need to whack on that pressure bandage right now. You don't have time to waste. So think in terms of that. The gear that you will use the most. A lot of people will say that they carry their survival fire kit. No, a fire kit is not survival. The simple ferro rod and Bic lighter in your pocket is your survival fire kit. However, in your sustainment kit, having a larger, better, more practical fire kit, that's different. Now you might say, well, it's just thinking in words, but yeah, we do not survive as other creatures do. We survive because we think and communicate. That is thinking and words. That is why we survive and what makes for survival. That's the important part. And with that in mind, now you can start looking at what you carry. Now, in their go bags and bug out bags, a lot of people like to put gas stoves. Yes, gas stoves are nice. I would never put it in a survival kit or an emergency kit, simply because it is too weighty and bulky and can run out. For me, I would much rather have one of those foldable flat twig stoves where I can gather from the environment almost anywhere, simply because that's the kind of world I live in, with just in case I'm in hardcore urban, these autocorrect, because we think that you might, there we go, sorry about that, they think you might not be doing things, even though we're live, nevertheless. I would carry then with it a couple of backup fuel tablets that you can also put in stoves like that, because solid fuel tablets are sealed up, they last for a long time, and they are backup to the use of random twigs and things, and those twig stoves burn pretty hot. And again, remember, I would be saying that I don't want to have to cook if I can avoid it, unless it's more than boil water. And if I got to some kind of a shelter, by and large, they will make a kettle available, which would mean that if I do have freeze-dried foods, I could reconstitute it as needed. Now, freeze-dried foods are the second level, and yes, they are very good. They are excellent, but they require preparation. So they are not for the during the emergency. They are for having gotten to the place of safety. So less important than instant eat type foods, foods that you can eat without any preparation as is, just like that. And there are a lot of them, including pouch type foods, though they do get a bit heavy. But tuna, for example, is an excellent protein source, which you can get in small pouches. It will go a very long way. Peanut butter, unbelievably good in an emergency situation. You get them in single person sachets from the hotel type things. And yep, they work really, really, really well as a sudden energy boost for somebody who's diabetic, because it's not a lot of sugar, but it is protein. Biltong, incredibly good for a diabetic and for anybody. And of course, being dry does all of the good things that matter. So there's a lot of different possible things that you can use that require virtually nothing in terms of preparation for sustainment that work. They work really well. And some of them are very, very filling as well. They keep you going. They will do all that is needed. Something that people often forget. In an emergency, you burn through a lot more vitamins, minerals, and all the rest of it, and you do need replacements. One of the primary things that I often don't see in survival kits is rehydration salts, multivitamins, which you will need to boost up your energy, far more than all of the fancy pills and what have you. If you need it, carry things that are anti-allergy. It might be good to have one or two just in case anyway, because you do develop allergies when you're in unfamiliar things and strange things bite you. Most importantly, anti-diarrhea pills. Carry them. You will need them. You will not be in your comfort zone, and if you have to deal with that as well, you will be even less in your comfort zone. And despite what you might think, it can actually cause you to pass away. It really can. It dehydrates you to a point where you are done. And yeah, so it is deadly. And having the means to manage it is absolutely critical when you are not getting your nice boiled water and your nice foods you're used to and all the rest of it. Yeah, you're going to need it. You don't want to get sick. And this, of course, goes straight back to the top tiered things that people coming out of serious natural disasters, what they found they needed in their emergency. As you can imagine, the top one was water. Good drinking water and water for all other means. That was number one. No surprises there. Number two, mostly it was food. They needed to get it and no longer could. So that was definitely an issue. By and large, most people were able to have clothes on hand and grab a couple of blankets. So shelter was usually pretty low on the list. But the third most important thing people wanted, hygiene and most especially toilet paper. The ability to keep your teeth clean, to have a bar of soap and toilet paper. The one thing that they could never get enough of in every disaster ever, while they were out sheltering somewhere until they could manage to get things sorted, toilet paper. I have never seen a survival kit with it in, Believe me, you will want it as a civilian. Some emergency kits do have it, and I always approve those immensely. And what kind? Well, take your pick, it doesn't matter. There are many possible varieties, and small tissue packs work great and flatten really well. Wet wipes, if you prefer, I don't care. But basic hygiene, a small bar of hotel soap will absolutely make things better and keep you from getting sick. These are things that matter to a civilian who is not a trained soldier and does not have on hand those things that you really don't consider. I have a, those little expandable towels you get that turns into a napkin? I have a couple of those, but I also have one that turns into a full-size beach towel. I bought two, one still sealed, the other one I actually use. I've used it on every holiday I've been in the last couple of years because it packs down to nothing. It's super absorbent. It dries really well, and then I throw it in the washing machine. It's easier than carrying a normal towel. It works. The other one I keep for my emergency kit, and it's literally the size of a hockey puck. Why would I carry something like that? Because it's effective, it's lightweight, it works. And this is the bottom line on your gear. Test it, use it, try it, and where it works, that's where you build. Consider also, especially with families in general, that there are certain things which technically are comfort items which will make everything better. The ability to listen to your favorite music. Yeah, carry your earbuds. Make sure that you have a cable if necessary. Make sure you can keep your devices charged, even if you don't have signal for some reason, but so you can listen to a bit of stored music on your phone. Play a game. Something, a deck of cards goes massively. A trick that was used in World War I even by soldiers in their survival kits. And most people consider it silly in modern survival, but they're wrong. They would carry boiled sweets. Firstly, it's a sugar boost. Secondly, it helps stave off hunger to a certain degree. Thirdly, it helps produce moisture in your mouth, which helps you feel less thirsty. Fourthly, it's an incredible morale boost. Boiled sweets go a long way. So does chewing gum, for all of much the same reason. No, they don't have a lot of nutritional value, but that's not the point. They're small, they're light, and they do a huge amount of good for the morale. So think in terms of that. Think of the things that will make better what you do. It doesn't cost a lot, is not difficult to get those little miniature Ziploc baggies and make a couple of bags of nuts and raisins or whatever you like. They will sustain. They will help. Energy bars, granola bars, you can buy them and they will give a good boost, not only of sugar but of other energy things. Protein bars, incredibly good and easy to carry, take no preparation whatsoever. So with all of that in mind, these are the things that form the basis of survival. Now, of course, in future, I'm doing a whole ton of the short videos, which I will load up for those who are interested, which not only show the levels of kit, some of the kit that I have, some of it I can't do because it's packed at the moment because we're shifting things around the house. But a wool blanket is a wool blanket and you will probably know what it looks like. I will go and get a couple of my packs and things and show at some stage that go along with all the other type gear that I carry. And think in terms of who you are and what you do. There's some really good stuff out there that work. I often swap out my small sling pack when I go to the beach for a very small slingable dry bag. Why? Because I can drop my phone in it, and even if I get submerged, the phone stays dry. It's logical, it works. I put all my gear into a dry bag, roll it all up. It's on hand and accessible, no issues. Instead of my normal sling bag, which is not waterproof. But if I'm on the beach, it makes sense. Ziploc bags to separate and manage your equipment. They have so many uses, and can be used to carry water and more if need be, but they're waterproof. And if they get a bit messed up, they're not very expensive. You can get a pack of 50, and there you go, you're sorted for ages. It makes sense. These are the kind of things that thinking about. What do you do? I spent many years examining military survival kits, and in the end I tossed all of it. I then started looking at the survival from a civilian perspective, and one of my biggest inspirations, weirdly enough, is videos of what women say they carry as an EDC in their handbag and why. What people have said they use to take to festivals and why. I often will carry a little tub in my hiking kit of sunscreen because as a reporter, I would often be out in the field, and one of the things I discovered is you are standing and waiting in the sun, and there is no shade for ages, and you burn, and it's not fun. And a small tube or tub of sunscreen will go a very, very, very long way to making your life a lot better. A good hat. It goes a long way to fixing things. Why? Because it does. Far more than the fancy gear or anything else. These are true things from what people actually use. So I've gained more knowledge from what people actually will carry. And also it's shown me the human psychology as well. How much survival gear can you carry before it's like a bit of a hassle and therefore you leave it at home and then don't have it when you need it? That's the big question. So bear in mind there's all sorts of stuff that you will want to carry because it's part of what you do. It's your daily life. Some stuff you have to carry because it's your daily life. And that weight may offset gear that you might need in an emergency. Know how to balance. That's the thinking. So I think we've touched on quite a lot of things for the live tonight, and I do hope you've enjoyed it. I must admit that it would have been nice to hear some of your thoughts. So do like, share, subscribe, comment, for goodness sake. Peoples, I'd love to hear more, and know that I will be posting more videos in the future. This is me from Barebones Survival. Have a great evening, and I'll see you in the next one.